First time in history, white deaths outnumber births in the United States. The deaths of white people outnumbered births for the very first time in U.S. history, the Census Bureau revealed on Thursday. It predicts that significant drops in birth rates versus death rates will be regular by 2025. They said here they saw a decrease of about 12,400 people out of 198 million non-Hispanic whites in the country. Demographers have pointed out that no other racial group in the U.S. experienced a similar drop. Such a natural decrease within the white population is the first of its kind. It's a natural decrease. That's funny. It was not even observed in the U.S. during the wars or depression, the Washington Post reported. We're jumping the gun on a long, slow decline of our white population, which is going to characterize this century, demographer of the Brookings Institution said. So it goes on here, says the data also revealed that half of America's under 5 age group is made up of racial and ethnic minorities, amounting to 49% in 2012. It says here, if the current growth continues, then the whites in the under 5 group will become a minority in 2013 to 2014. The Bureau also predicts that in just 5 years, minorities will become the majority of children under 18. And after that mark, the total white population will start to significantly decline as aging baby boomers will start dying. So, and that's what I say too. I mean, I don't know how much you can really do about it. Most of the damage has already been done. Even with my grandparents that came over, and my grandparents were actually born here, but their parents weren't. And it was even a big deal for like my Irish grandmother to marry a Swedish grandfather, you know, because he was Lutheran and she was Catholic. I mean, that was a big deal. But now that's not even taken into consideration. And you know, those people that kind of like not condemned it, but looked down on that stuff, especially race mixing, is those people, they were looking out for their race, they were looking out for their people, but now they would be looked upon as you know, non-progressive racists. So like my parents in the baby boomer generation and their parents, I guess they'd be, I don't know what they would be considered, maybe the baby boomers too, but people that were in World War II, you know, they didn't really think about that stuff, you know. Now there's the younger generations, the generation whatever X and Y and millennials that you know, we're concerned about this, and now we have to face the politically correctness of trying to talk about this. Look at this. One reason is women with college degrees are choosing careers and postponing getting married and having kids until at least late in their 20s, since it shows that if women have children later in life, they will opt to have fewer of them or be unable to have more. So it says here that white women are more likely to be childless than Hispanic or African American women. Of course, the recession, as they call it, had impact on birth rates as more white women believe they could not afford to have more kids. Who does affirmative action help most? White women, they say. So Sally Cohn argues that Abigail Fisher has little room to complain. The Supreme Court is about to hand out a major decision on affirmative action based on the case of Abigail Fisher, who claims she was denied admission to the University of Texas because she's white, which is kind of ironic, says Fisher is exactly the same kind of person affirmative action most helps in America today. Studies have repeatedly shown that white women have benefited disproportionately from the policies compared to people of color, which I say is a bunch of bullshit, because I've said personally I've had experience that my family members who happen to be white, they were valedictorians and, you know, academic decathlons, you know, smart people, and they were denied help. And it's not like we were making a lot of money. We were like in a lower middle class bracket. Successes of white women make a case not for abandoning affirmative action, but for continuing it. Says women still face workplace challenges, but black people face perhaps greater challenges, one study found. So yeah, this is a landmark equality case, at least that's what they're calling it. They said it's going to decide whether to pull back on the 1960s era remedies for racial discrimination that critics say have outlived their need. One case tests a race-based affirmative action policy at the University of Texas gives an advantage to black and Latino students at the expense of some white applicants. Another case could end part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that puts the South under special scrutiny for its law on voting in elections. They will also decide for the first time whether to extend equal rights to gay couples who are married and to gays and lesbians who wish to marry. Next up, Supreme Court says states may not add citizenship proof for voter registration. States may not require additional proof of citizenship on federal forms designed to streamline voter registration procedures. The Supreme Court ruled on Monday, followed by why elites love illegal immigration, they're cheap labor. So it goes on here and it says, when it comes to immigration reform, the real divide lies not between Republicans and Democrats, but between elites and non-elites. For the corporate echelon, creating a guest worker program and granting amnesty without worrying about securing the border first ensures continued access to millions of cheap laborers from Latin America. The financially forgotten generation, economically raising the millennials in a debt-strapped financial world. Over half of millennials have no savings, so those who are roughly 18 to 34 years old are growing up in financial shadow of their baby boomer parents. This group of Americans is more diverse in what they perceive to be a good quality of life. They prefer to live close to work and shopping. They are not big on suburbs, and many are massively in debt. It seems to go against the grain of what we expect. The future generation of Americans will have it financially tougher than the current generation. It says student debt is a large burden for many of these millennials, now over $1 trillion, continues to be the fastest growing segment of non-housing related debt. 87% said they don't have enough money to start saving, and 81% want to pay down their debt first. Homeownership rate for younger Americans has fallen since the housing bubble popped and has yet to recover. And then they have median net worth. They have 35, which is the yellow, and you can see it going down from 1984 to 2009. So this isn't just Walmart. This is what I talked about temporary work and part-time. Most of the jobs that are being created are part-time work, low-wage jobs. Talking about Obamacare, I was saying how it's going to actually create an uptick in or a downturn in unemployment numbers. It'll be good for that, but that's only because they're taking people and they're either letting them go or cutting their hours, and they're hiring other people to fill that, so they don't have to pay benefits, whatever. Obamacare is turning Walmart workers into temporary workers. My friend, he just referred to it as a flexible workforce. That's what it's called now. I see it as basically three classes. You got the flexible workforce, the low-wage temp jobs. Then you got the ones in the middle, which are like rail workers, which get paid about $80,000 to $100,000. Cops, teachers. Believe it or not, garbage men. There's these jobs out there that, man, you got to take all kinds of tests. I've heard of these stories from people, friends and family, where they have to give blood tests. They have to go through like 10 interviews. I mean, it's like highly competitive just to get a job that you probably get maybe like 15 years ago easily. They have to jump through all kinds of hoops to get these jobs. But once they get them, I mean, they're complete slaves. I mean, they're working 7 days a week, like I was talking about. They're really riding and working them, getting everything they can out of them. Of course, this comes on the after what? The quote recession, or what I call the wealth consolidation operation of 2008, where income inequality just grew, right? Skyrocketed, and a lot of that wealth was never really trickled down. What that did was it created a pool of very, very desperate workers who would be willing to work harder, work longer for less. So you got that middle class, that middle part that I was telling you about, that are willing to basically sell everything to get these jobs, and then of course you got the elites, the bankers, the lawyers, the doctors. But see, what the doctors and the lawyers don't understand is that their job is in under threat too. You know, everybody, no one cares. It's like generational warfare, just like everything else, gender warfare. It's just pitting everything and everybody against each other. And so, you know, in the middle class of whatever they're, you know, rail workers or garbage men, I mean, these people were willing to sell their souls to get these jobs. They want to live like the elites. They want to have these brand new, big, honking, brand new trucks and these new houses and go on vacations and stuff like that. In other words, they want to keep living the lifestyle or standard of living that they had before, as in that lower class. So the lower class now, that's why it's like vacation, that ain't going to happen anymore. You know, new cars, that's not going to happen anymore. But that top tier class of doctors, you know, surgeons and lawyers, think about it. The surgeons are already being replaced by robotics. You have nurses now being replaced by robots. Prison guards being replaced by robots. Again, prison guard would fall into that middle class. big benefits, high pay, you know, cushy, not a cushy job, but a definitely secure job. And then, of course, you have lawyers, like in Star Trek, you know. They were actually using computers to carry out what the judge, the jury, and the counselors, the lawyers. So that's where it's going. Even they're under threat, but they won't give a shit until it's their job on the line. I rambled on there, but I have some extra time here because of that Windows crashed and everything crashed. So I only have so many articles this last video. But it says here that Affordable Care Act, Obamacare opponents warned it would happen, but now there's mounting proof that full-time employees are being replaced with part-timers, at least at the retail industry, where Walmart is focused on keeping the majority of workers on part-time hours only. U.S. producing abysmal low number of primary care doctors. Despite a shortage of U.S. primary care doctors, less than 25% of new doctors go into the field, and few still work in rural areas. It says here that the study's finding raises questions about whether federally funded graduate medical education institutions are meeting the nation's need for primary care physicians. Well, it's easier just to import Chinese and Indians and have them work for free like they do the interns that are here in the United States. Obama slated to name 5 openly homosexual foreign ambassadors. The Obama regime's ongoing celebration of Homosexual Pride Month has seemingly carried over into its ambassadorial nominations. Monday, the president announced the nomination of Daniel Bayer as ambassador to the Vienna-based Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. If confirmed, Bayer would be the first open homosexual to serve as ambassador to a multilateral institution. It says here in the Washington Post that a rash of homosexual appointments is repayment for the massive role gay activists had in the president's fundraising efforts as well as Election Day. Referring to this HBO executive, James Costas, who together with his boyfriend fundraiser over $1 million for president's re-election. So he's expected to be named ambassador to Spain earlier this week. But it goes on and it says they report that dozens of members of Obama's national finance team are openly homosexual, saying that an argument could be made that gay Americans handed Obama the election by voting for him by a 3-to-1 margin. Record droughts, torrential rains, is this the new norm? So they always have to say the new norm, right? Heavy rains and major flooding have upturned states from Florida to the Midwest and up and down the East Coast, causing havoc for millions of people, turning the driveways into a roaring creek. Says that the drought still affects 44% of the nation. Says the biggest droughts in memory racked the U.S. last year, with climatologists comparing them to the 1930s Dust Bowl. 2012 was the hottest year on record. They say here the continual flooding drought pattern brought on by the planet's changing climate and the inherent damage it's wreaking has now become so common it has its own moniker, flash drought. Second Dust Bowl headed for American West, they asked. Dust storms on the rise, says a study. Goes on and says that while the area is known for its often dusty visage, think all the Westerners you've ever seen, drought and high winds are causing more storms than usual. It says that's only half the problem, is the other half of storms are unexplained, pointing to off-road vehicle use, oil and gas development, urban and rural development, and grazing as possible causes, not chemtrails or weather modification, spraying of aerosols. No, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Met Office holds emergency meeting to discuss Britain's increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. Remember, Germany just had those floods and stuff, along with Texas. It follows the coldest spring in more than 50 years. The weather has been so unusual the past few years that the Met Office is concerned that the repercussions of climate change may already be upon us. They're concerned by a sequence of increasingly strange weather in the UK, which includes the coldest spring of 50 years this year. And that's what I'm saying. It's not just weather modification. I think that we are heading to a cooling period / ice age. So, you know, I think that personally that they can only spray so long to combat that cooling. So when you see cooling, that means that it's probably should be about another 10 degrees cooler or 5 degrees cooler had they not been spraying. But they like to say, like they equate geoengineering and weather mod with cooling, combating climate change or global warming, but they're actually creating a lot of this warming. It says here that the coldest spring in 50 years this year, followed by the wettest summer in a century last year, as well as droughts and the prolonged winter. So it says it's called an unprecedented meeting of experts to discuss Britain and Europe's increasingly unpredictable weather patterns in a bid to determine if they represent a fundamental shift as a result of climate change or simply come down to variable weather. Again, they won't talk about spraying of aerosols. They'll talk about the declining the Arctic sea ice, but they won't talk about the growing record size Antarctic sea ice. Wouldn't keep my hopes up about this meeting. Not much is really going to come out of it, because if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right solutions. Thank you.